Welcome to Leadership Development That Works. My name is Kyle Berger, and today I want to dive deep on one-on-ones. As a leader, more and more is asked of you with less and less. So anytime you have an opportunity to drive the work and drive the development of your team members, you got to make the most of it. And that's where I find the one-on-one is really critical. Unfortunately, what I hear a lot in the coaching that I do with leaders is they really struggle in terms of getting any engagement in the one-on-ones. Feels very routine. They don't necessarily feel like they're getting a lot out of the meetings. They're doing most of the talking, which, by the way, is a red flag. If you're doing one-on-ones with your team members, and a great way to gauge whether it's an effective meeting or not is to just stop and sort of assess who's doing all the talking here. Because if it's you, then you're not setting up the meeting correctly. So let's talk about that. What does that look like, and why is that important? First of all, I encounter a lot of leaders who say, well, I don't do one-on-ones. I already talk to my employees during the day. When things come up, when they have issues, they know where to find me. Problem is, that's not really a one-on-one, right? You're just putting out fires and dealing with the day-to-day work that needs to be done. There isn't any driving of the work. There isn't any necessarily development. I think you're really missing an opportunity also to deepen the relationship, get to know that person better. That is always a positive for you as a leader. The more information you have about somebody, the better off you are in terms of your ability to lead them, navigate problems with them, provide feedback, delegate to them. But that all comes on that foundation of having a really good working relationship with them. And the one-on-one, if it's done correctly, can be a really good opportunity to do that. A lot of times leaders report they're frustrated and they're really not getting the engagement they want. So let's talk about what is the correct way to set up a one-on-one. I just want to make a couple of recommendations to you, a couple of things I want you to think about. First of all, I think you always want to start out with, in terms of that agenda, personal check-in. So if they've got family, you're checking in on that. If they've got something they're really passionate about or a big interest in their lives, and the opportunity presents itself, you're always asking about that. You're checking in. You're doing that personal check-in with them right off the bat. But then you want to transition into ongoing projects. So the work that's going on now, and how is that going? Where do we stand? If there are timelines or goals around that, you're asking for that information. And then you want to look at what's coming up around the corner. So if there's some planning or projects that are upcoming, you want to talk about that. How is the employee preparing for that? What are they doing planning-wise? A couple of questions that I want you to think about as you engage in your future one-on-ones. What's going well? What challenges are you experiencing? And how are you working through them? The other part to a good one-on-one is development. So it can be implied, or it can be something that you're just making note of and making sure you're hitting on. I would say that you want to have a really good development plan for the year. So where I see a lot of problems with development plans is, again, just like we talked about with the one-on-one, it just sort of becomes this routine, rote thing, and you see a development plan that says, I'm going to sign up for a class, or I'm going to, be a nicer person. Whatever it is, it's not meaty. It doesn't really mean anything. It's just checking a box and filling out a form. Don't make that mistake. So as a leader, when you're doing your planning for the year, and if you have a development plan as part of your overall performance evaluation that your HR has put in place, make the most of that. challenge them to come up with something that's meaty and specific. The reason you want to do that is then you can work that into your one-on-ones. You don't have to necessarily work that into every one-on-one. Maybe you bring it up once a month or once a quarter, where you carve out time in the development objectives and covering the development plan, asking things like, what's the current status? What have you accomplished as it relates to that development plan that you feel good about? And what are the next steps? So asking some questions to really drive that, because you want to take advantage of this opportunity and this time with them to not only drive the work, but also drive the development, right? You want a development that is something you believe they should be working on and developing, something they believe, and something that benefits the team. So that's really the trifecta, those three things. Is it something that you believe would be beneficial for them to be working on? They've got to believe it. So that's why typically you want to ask them to come forward with what they think first, and then something that's going to benefit the performance of the team. If you can wrap those three things around development, that's really the sweet spot of it. And once you've got that figured out in terms of that development plan, you need to be bringing it up in the one-on-ones. Or you may want to separately just meet with the person on that. I'll let you determine in terms of your time and what do you believe is most efficient. So that's really, when you think about an agenda, the last thing I want to say, this is really crucial, really critical. At the end of the agenda, action steps, target date. Have that identified. And you want to document this, if you want to put it in OneNote, something that you have access to, something that the team member has access to, and it just becomes a rolling thing. So you have these standing agenda items. You have at the end of each meeting filled out action steps, target date. So that way, when you have the next one-on-one, you're not, there's continuity. You're picking up on the last one-on-one. You're starting the next one-on-one with a review of the previous one-on-one's action steps and target dates. So now there's continuity. You're building on one-on-one to the next one-on-one. It also makes, just from a practical sense, your life easier as a leader, because basically, when it comes to tracking what your employee's up to, you have that documentation. So when you need to do the performance review, or you need to do the midpoint of the year performance review to sort of let them know where they're at, you have easy access to the documentation on that. Last tip I want to make to you, it's really important when it comes to one-on-ones. If you're going to make a decision that you want to have one-on-ones with your team members, and especially if you put it out there, you got to keep them. It really goes to your integrity as a leader. I can't tell you how many times I have encountered leaders who have, with the best of intentions, said, hey, I'm going to have one-on-ones with all my team members. We're going to have them weekly, and I'm going to go out and schedule them. And then there's no agenda. There's no engagement. We're not getting a lot out of the one-on-ones. And before you know it, they let it slide. Really, I think it's one of the worst things you can do as a leader, because it really goes to your integrity. Are you a person of your word? So if you're going to have one-on-ones, pick a cadence that you can stick to. Have an agenda. If you don't have an agenda right off the bat, you could be signaling to that team member that the meeting's not all that important to you. And if you aren't getting the engagement and you are finding yourself frustrated by how these meetings are going, you need to self-reflect, because chances are you are not setting up that meeting correctly. Another side benefit to having that rolling agenda and having those agenda items set up is your employee knows what they need to come to the one-on-one prepared to talk about. And you want that out there. You want that so they're coming prepared. They know what we're going to cover. They know what's expected of them as they show up for these one-on-ones. That's going to help with your engagement and getting things more, just getting more out of that whole meeting. So that really is what I wanted to share with you in terms of the one-on-ones. I find a lot of times leaders are frustrated. Don't let that frustration or that lack of engagement stop you from having the meeting. Assess the meeting. If you're the one doing all the talking, then let's go back to the drawing board. Think about the things I talked about today. An agenda that really drives that conversation, that not only covers the work we're going to be doing and currently doing, the work we anticipate coming around the corner, and development worked in there somewhere. Maybe that's once a month, maybe that's once a quarter around that development plan. Action steps, target dates. You're going to feel a lot better if you put that kind of structure around your one-on-one, and you're going to see results. The other thing is, if you, and this will be my last tip as we wrap up here, the other thing that I think was really important, especially if you haven't had an agenda around your one-on-ones and you're putting this new agenda in, engage your employee on the agenda. So ask them to come to the meeting with what they think the agenda is. You come to the meeting with what you think the agenda is, and the two of you compare notes and come up with an agenda. And then use that agenda for a couple of meetings and then go back and reassess with that employee and make adjustments as necessary. I hope you got value out of this. If you did, like and subscribe because that's going to help get this information out to more people. And check out other videos on my channel, Leadership Development That Works, practical. We're not getting pie in the sky, stuff that's going to actually help you in your day-to-day of leadership.